Hi there. Today I'm going to show you how to work with custom APIs in ETLWorks. We're going to use Workbench public API, which returns data in a JSON format, and there is no authentication. But ETLWorks does support a lot of authentication types, anything from basic, preemptive, OS2, OS1, AWS, and many others. Let's take a look at the data returned by web service. So I'm going to switch to Explorer, and I'm going to query the data. So as you can see, it's quite complex nested document. If we'll continue exploring the data, we will see that majority of data stored, actual data, stored under array node in this JSON document. So we're going to use SQL to make it more flat. Here we go. So it's now kind of flat, still has some nested nodes, but we will deal with this later. So let's remember this query. We're going to use it later. So I'm going to switch to flows, and I'm going to create a flow which extracts data from a web service and loads it into the database. So database is naturally flat. There are tables and views. So we're going to be loading this into the flat table in MySQL database. So our source connection is going to be Workbench API. The format is going to be JSON, and that's the endpoint. Our destination is going to be MySQL database, and we're going to be loading data into the table called WB country, which does not exist yet. So we'll need to do some mapping because, as you know, the data returned by web service is nested. So we're going to make it more flat using queries that we used before in Explorer. And then we will let the flow create the mapping for us. As you can see, it's not quite flat yet. So let's make it flat using drag and drop mapping editor. Now let's test the transformation. It looks much better. It's completely flat. So I'm going to save this flow and I'm going to run it. And we are going to take a look at the data created by this flow. So the table name is WB country. And here you go. I'm going to switch back to flows. Now we're going to create a flow which transforms the document in returned by web service, which as we know in JSON format, to a document in a different format. We're going to use Parquet, and as a destination, we're going to use a data lake in S3. So this flow reads data from a web service, transforms it to Parquet document, and stores this document in a data lake. So we're going to use the same source connection in JSON format and API endpoint. Our destinations this time is going to be data lake in S3. And our format is going to be Parquet. And that's going to be our file name. We're going to use the same query as before to make it a little bit more flat, but not completely flat. This time we want to preserve nested elements. So we're not going to do any mapping. I'm going to save it and I'm going to run it. Let's take a look at the data. So we have a data lake connection with Parquet format attached to it. And here's the file. So remember, we decided to preserve nested elements. Parquet supports it. So we can explore data in nested data elements. Okay. Now I'm going to switch back to flows. What if I don't want to transform the source document in JSON format returned by a web service? Instead, I want to preserve it as is and once again store in data lake. For this, I'm going to use a copy flow type, copy files flow type. This flow doesn't do any transformations at all. It reads the data and saves it in a different destination as is. Extremely fast, extremely efficient. So we're going to name it copy to data lake. Connection once again is World Bank. There's no format this time because we don't want to transform the data. Same endpoint, data lake as a destination, and we are going to store data in a JSON format. So I'm going to run this flow, and let's take a look at the data. Now we have US JSON document. So I'm going to switch a format to JSON so we confirm that it is indeed JSON. And here you go. Exactly the same document as returned by a web service. Not transformed to any other format. Extremely fast, extremely efficient. And this is it for today. Thank you.